Well, what is the conundrum then that women face? Women are told, oh, you shouldn't eat fish when you're pregnant or breastfeeding, and I agree with that because of contamination in fish, in some fish. But there are vegetarian sources of DHA. There's DHA made from marine algae, which is the DHA used to supplement infant formula. This is a key player because, we want the kid on the left, we don't want the kid on the right. And risk of ADHD in breastfeeding is strongly correlated, negative risk. And if you look at DHA levels in boys, rather DHA levels in boys who are, look at the DHA levels within the erythrocyte, you see a dramatic reduction of DHA in ADHD boys. Well, here it is. Make sure on the quiz that you get the double blondes put in the right place because we will count off for that. But in this last section, I just want to talk about why DHA is so important. From a structural perspective, yes, it's 1/4 of the brain's fat. Plays a fundamental role in mitochondrial neuronal membrane fluidity, but also in neurogenesis, gliogenesis, and aptogenesis, the formation, the production of the brain. It activates brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is growth factor for the brain. DHA affects genetic transcription, and in my opinion may be the so-called IQ gene. This was the focus of this book that I wrote. How important is DHA for brain development? How wonderful it is that foods are now enriched with DHA. I recently had the opportunity to appear on the Today Show, and we were looking at all the foods that were enriched with DHA, and 15 seconds before we went live, Ann Curry leaned over to me, and she said, "Doctor, you really don't believe any of this stuff, do you?" I was about to say no, but I got on the show, and all that, but anyway. So this is very fundamental then, and that is that there's so much more that goes on with breastfeeding than just giving DHA. There's the emotional aspects of reducing cortisol, etc. When my wife was pregnant with Raisha, I remember we didn't know if we were going to have a girl or boy. A friend of mine said, well, as long as the baby has 10 fingers and 10 toes. And I thought, a medulla oblongata would probably come in handy for cheerleading practice. Well, this last brief section, I have 5 minutes left, we're going to talk about the fact that you can regenerate your brain. Now, you can grow new brain cells specifically in the area where you need them most, in the hippocampus. When I was in college, they said every beer you drank, you would lose 10,000 brain cells. You remember that one, or whatever else you did in college? Not that but nonetheless, face it, would we be giving lectures if that were true, if we didn't have regeneration of those brain cells? Actually, you can. These studies of individuals who are exposed to bromodioxyuridine, which labels cells during anaphase, shows that even into our senescence we retain this ability. You're probably wondering, yes, we retain the ability for self-renewal throughout our lives. Let's focus on brain-derived neurotrophic factor in the 5 minutes that I have left. This is brain growth hormone, BDNF, a key player. And we know that DHA turns on the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So, other issues turn on brain-derived neurotrophic factor as well, including caloric restriction, physical exercise and mental exercise. Again, for clarity of mind, I promise you that fasting is a very key player. And here's the chemistry behind it. Well, so now we're looking at brain-derived neurotrophic factor. We talked about DHA and its role as a PPAR gamma ligand, and it's also a COX2 inhibitor. But this might explain then, because it turns on brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the dramatic reduction in risk of Alzheimer's disease in those individuals, according to Martha Claire Morris at Rush, who have the highest levels of DHA. Interestingly, a decreased level of DHA is not limited to Alzheimer's patients, but is all across the spectrum of cognitive decline. This study looked at, the Framingham study again, at risk of Alzheimer's disease compared to DHA levels. And you would say to me, okay, those are retrospective studies. Where are the interventional trials? Huge interventional trial began in February, 18 months, 53 institutions are looking at comparing against placebo control, what is the effect of DHA on in Alzheimer's. 2 sources of DHA, microalgae and fish. And again, we talk about the fact that DHA plays these important roles, but also acts as a COX2 inhibitor. Many of our neurodegenerative conditions are characterized by upregulation of the COX-2 enzyme. If you look at the COX-2 enzyme in the hippocampus of an Alzheimer's patient and compare that to the dementia rating scale, you find that those individuals who were most demented had the highest upregulation of COX-2. Again, high levels of DHA reduce risk of Alzheimer's. My last presentation, my last case with 1 minute left, is a gentleman came to see me with dementia. And I'm going to show you his MRI scan, and you don't need to be a neuroradiologist to understand that Homer's got some problems here. Well, I am grateful for this opportunity to have shared my feeling that we need to spend time focusing on preventive medicine as it relates to the brain. For some reason, the brain seems to always get left out of the mix. You know, part of preventive medicine is kind of undoing some of the dumb things that people tend to do with themselves to keep injuries from happening. And I would submit that when we see U.S. News and World Report, we should not focus on what we can do to push for a cure, but rather it should say what you can do to prevent it. The Neijing stated that prevention is the ultimate principle of wisdom. To cure a disease after it has manifested is like digging a well when one already feels thirsty, or forging weapons when the war has already begun. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. Thank you very much.